In the brutal landscape of the Ultimate Fighting Championship, where the archetype of the tough guy has been etched in stone for decades, a bespectacled former chemistry teacher from San Luis, Maranhão, has completely disrupted the narrative by treating the Octagon like a laboratory and his opponents like variables in a complex equation. Caio, the natural, Borralho, represents a fundamental shift in the evolution of mixed martial arts, moving away from the era of raw brawling into an age of hyper-specialized, calculated chaos, where every movement is underpinned by data and psychological warfare. To understand why Borralho is the most dangerous intellectual in the sport, you have to look past the iconic black frame glasses with the white tape in the middle and see the architectural foundation of the Fighting Nerds gym in São Paulo. This isn't just a quirky branding exercise or a gimmick designed for social media engagement. It is a rigid academic approach to combat sports where Borralho and his coach Pablo Sucupira demand that their athletes study English to handle international media, master public speaking to command the room, and spend more hours in film study than they do on the mats. This nerd philosophy was forged in the fire of Caio's early career, particularly after his 2015 loss to João Carvalho, a moment that forced him to realize that being a national judo champion and a naturally gifted athlete wasn't enough to survive the chaotic variables of a high-level cage fight. He spent years rebuilding his game from the ground up, perfecting a southpaw stance that utilizes a 56% striking accuracy, a number that is staggering in a division filled with heavy-handed wildcards, and integrating a judo-based clinch game that yields a 76% takedown defense rate. His journey to the UFC was an anomaly in itself, as he was forced to win not once, but twice on Dana White's Contender Series, because the UFC brass initially felt his calculated, dominant style lacked the blood and guts they were looking for. However, his second performance was so undeniable that they had no choice but to let the nerd into the building. Since that night, Caio has embarked on one of the most statistically impressive runs in middleweight history, dismantling established veterans like Armen Petrosyan, Michal Oleksiejczuk, and Abus Magomedov with a cold, detached efficiency that makes it look like he's playing a video game while his opponents are stuck in a street fight. The true litmus test for this scientific approach came in August 2024 against the legendary killer gorilla, Jared Cannonier, a man known for ending careers with a single touch. In that 5-round main event, Borralho didn't just survive the power. He dismantled the veteran's rhythm, showed an iron chin when the data points failed, and nearly finished one of the toughest men on the planet in the final frame, proving to the world that his nerd style could translate to the championship level. Even as the division shifted and he faced his first major hurdle in a razor-thin decision against Nassourdine Imavov in late 2025, the narrative around Borralho didn't crumble. It merely entered a new phase of refinement. Heading into his pivotal clash with the elite grappler Reinier de Ridder at UFC 326 in March 2026, Borralho isn't just fighting for a win. Il is fighting to prove that the Fighting Nerds era wasn't a flash in the pan, but the new standard for the 185-pound division. He carries the weight of a movement that celebrates the intellectual side of violence, showing every fan that you don't have to be a stereotypical villain to be the most feared man in the room. You just have to be the one who did the most homework. As he steps into the cage under the bright lights of 2026, the question isn't whether the world is ready for a nerd champion, but whether the rest of the middleweight elite can ever hope to solve a puzzle that is constantly evolving, learning, and upgrading its own software in real time. This is the story of a man who looked at the most chaotic sport on earth and decided it was simply a math problem waiting to be solved. And as he inches closer to a title shot against the likes of Dricus du Plessis or Khamzat Chimaev, it's becoming clear that the era of the Fighting Nerd has only just begun.